I know you're not normally used to seeing the editor at the start of a video, but this video is a rather serious topic, and I would like it if we could all be on a similar page at the beginning. This video is about mourning, grief, dealing with processing grief, and suicide. It's not a deep dive, it's more talking about the loss of a friend recently. In dealing with grief, that you notice how you deal with grief as you're dealing with it, to really assess of if the way you're dealing with grief is actually effective, and if it's sustainable. Because the one thing about grief and aging and going through life is that one thing that is guaranteed: you will be dealing with it again, whether it's over the same person or whether it's someone else, because death is, well, one guarantee of life is death. You can't have one without the other. Also notice in the video that I haven't, I didn't feel comfortable over editing. I've edited long breaks out that are just really unbearably long as I'm processing, but I left a lot of these breaks in there. I would say 50% of the video is silent pauses in between words. I'm sure none of you will see the same thing that I see in these pauses, because I know what I'm experiencing in these breaks. But there's a lot of processing going on in these silent moments. That's why I left them in there, and I think it's an important part to be able to show that you need to let it. It's a lot more efficient, a lot more sustainable to allow these feelings and emotions to wash over you, instead of trying to hold them back or not allowing them to, and then they hit you really quite hard. And also accept the fact that this grieving process is a lifetime process. It is something that will always come around in different forms. So, yeah. With that in mind, I'm trying to keep my focus as best I can, but my mind definitely has a lot going on. So my holidays are over, and maybe I will make another video about the consequences of trying to go on holiday and taking a break from yourself and the repercussions of what happens in doing that. But that is not what I'm gonna talk about now. What I'm gonna talk about is processing death and suicide. Nice light topic to come back with. This is definitely not the video I want to make about suicide. Well, it's not the video that I need to make. Or maybe it is the one I need to make. I don't know. Figure it out at the end. A very old, dear friend of mine who I've known, I think, from 11 years old. Someone who really,
there is not a single bad memory I have of this person. A heart of gold, all round nice guy. You would say all round nice guy. One of the first of the guys I grew up with to get married, to start a family, to buy a house, to live the Australian dream. And I mean, I definitely lost contact with him over the years, but there was no doubt in my mind that we would continue our friendship again at some point. But for a while there, I definitely did not fit into his lifestyle as much as I would have liked to. Having a unpredictable, although friendly and nice, but unpredictable drug-taking friend around your children and wife or home, I completely understand. I respected. I took the hints and respected his space, but I have quite a lot of regrets. Which is a part of the process of grieving. Is that, of course, the regrets you have with this person, because they can never be resolved, come up. And some of the big regrets are that I didn't get to see him again, apart from once in Australia. I invited him to a party, and he turned up, and I mean, it was really nice. We spoke for a good few hours about everything, catching up over the last 5 to 7 years before that. But I was drunk and stoned and a little bit high. And busy being all over the place. Here, there. Which is how I survive, for lack of a better word, being socially. That's another complicated topic. But the last words that we spoke to each other face to face were that it's really nice to see each other and miss each other, and that I would come to see his family and come to his house and check out his life, and I couldn't. I can look back now and say, well, look, you were really spiraling into schizophrenia and completely in denial about your mental state, and convinced yourself that it was best that you don't be around people's families and kids and whatever excuses I came up with at the time not to put myself in situations that were too confronting, and somehow the conservative lifestyle was just somehow confronting. I can't really explain that, but that's something that happens. But I am thankful for the fact that once I did start coming back to reality and getting a grip, long after my big psychosis, and probably a year or so after giving up drugs and alcohol and was coming off medication, I reached out to him and wrote him a message, and was really looking forward to being able to, now that I'm sober and a bit clear, being able to come into his life, knowing that, yeah, I'm never going to be, his best friend again, but that we could be in each other's lives and we could offer things in each other's lives again. Really, it was one of the people I was really looking forward to seeing again when I go back to Australia. And this is the thing about suicide. There is no predicting it. There is no there's no real way of predicting it. Whenever I bring up suicide with people, quite often they're surprised that I am suicidal. Some of my close friends have kind of reacted very, they just don't know, so like their reaction is kind of like anger instantly, that I would be thinking about doing that to them. And some just shut down completely and say that you don't talk about that, only pussies take that way out, only, that's a cowardly act. Which again is a natural way of processing. I've also had those thoughts pass through our minds, but and I don't recommend anyone does try to kill themselves. That is not what I'm saying. But have you ever tried to kill yourself? It's not fucking easy, okay? It's really not. The act itself can be easily done. But to get there mentally, that's not an easy road to go down. Most people turn back before they keep continuing down that road. But many people do not. And like I said, I haven't had a lot of contact with him. And I can only assume what he went through. But the guy that I know the guy that I know if he had really thought about killing himself, he would not have done it in the way that he did it. So that tells me that it's a spontaneous thing. That the thoughts came and they were so overwhelming that his view narrowed so severely that was the only option. And that he couldn't see any way other than that option. And he couldn't stop thinking about it. Now, he might have had somewhere in his past the minor thoughts or desires of suicide and not paid them any attention. Now, all of a sudden, he can't not pay them attention, and they're just overwhelming. can't fight them. That's all there is. And it's at this point that you have to think about them. You have to focus on them. You have to entertain it. You have to play it out. Because the guy I know, he didn't plan it out. The things we used to do, even the most stupid of things, we would make these grand plans, and it was the same with everyone. You know, he liked to plan. He liked to plan and stick to the plan, and that's what we're going to do. And that's a part of dealing with the grief of suicide, is to accept the fact that it doesn't make sense. Accept the fact that it's, when someone does it, you can't find the logic. Because if they applied logic to it, they probably wouldn't have done it. And of course you have to process the anger. And my anger comes from, why the fuck does he get to do that and I don't? And the anger that comes from, like, how can he do that to his family, his kids, his mother, his sisters, his brother? You have to allow that to come through. You can't bury that anger down. You have to let that anger out. Anger is not exclusive to men, but I would say men have a particular problem in dealing with their anger as it arises. I am no different. I think a lot of us in this new age feel very conflicted in how to process it. We don't feel socially comfortable anymore being able to express it in small forms of screaming out swear words, or just picking up an inanimate object and breaking it and then just getting it out of our system. This was, which is kind of also like the call to arms for other people dealing with aggression to, basically end up having more conflict into the world, which is what the world does not need. Everyone experiences anger differently. But I cannot stress enough how much it is the individual's obligation to process their anger. Like I am basically a Zen master in comparison to what I used to be in dealing with my anger. I was never overly violent, but I was very aggressive. In dealing with grief and anger, this is a particularly explosive time, and there will, especially involved with suicide, there will be a lot of anger involved with suicide, and it can be combined a lot with guilt for feeling angry towards a person who has died. And so it takes extra precaution and extra processing power. And I know this because even though I spend most of my time processing all of my emotions and being aware of them, I have still been caught out twice this week and ended up screaming
at people, whether they deserve it or not, or whether they're stupid or they're idiots, or they stepped to me first, or I was completely in the right and they're in the wrong, whatever situation, it doesn't matter. It is my responsibility to be in control of my anger and my emotions, regardless of the circumstances. Now, obviously, if someone then physically attacks you, that's a completely different story, but that's not what I'm talking about here. I just wanted to really stress that there is no one solution for processing anger, and everyone needs to find their way of dealing with it, not just letting it out. That's releasing the pressure valve. I get that. Sports, dancing, yes, drugs, alcohol, okay, but these are all just like, band-aids over an axe wound. It'll never hold. And one day it'll come off, and then you're in big trouble. There's enough professional help there out in the world for people to figure out how the best way to deal with this. So I just really want to stress that anger is the individual's responsibility.
And of course, there's the simple sorrow of the fact that you're never going to see this person again. We were together, we had our first joint. He stole some weed from his sister and brought it to my house. And literally, I was 13 or 14, look what I got! Some real shitty weed. And I mean, this was before internet, so we didn't have any idea what the hell we were doing. I had some stolen cigarettes somewhere. I remember we had one paper. I don't know if he had the paper or I had the paper. We had one rolling paper. He didn't have a clue how to do it. And I'd seen it done, and I was like, I think I could figure this out. Oh God, I don't know how this paper did not fucking tear. 45 minutes of rolling, unrolling, rolling, unrolling, rolling. Finally got it. Snuck out onto the roof, and we're smoking this joint and analyzing each single puff. I don't feel any different. No, I don't feel any different. No, I don't feel any different. No, I don't feel any different. Anyway, we get down to the end, and I'm like, I think it's finished, and he's like, no, I think I can take no more. And he puts a little bit more, and it slips out of his fingers and sticks to his lip and burns him, and so he just hits himself in the face to get it off. Totally misjudges it, just face plants himself. Of course, it falls out of his mouth and falls right down to the front entranceway of my house with my, at the time, conservative parents. And my father, who at this age was quite terrifying to my friends. And to me, it was just a bit of that's a deep hole we're not going to get into. And then as we go to get up from the roof, we hear the front door open, so we just lay down on the roof. Sure enough, my dad comes out to bring the compost out of all fucking things. I don't think he ever brought the compost out up until this point in time, but brings the compost out, walks across, where we'll look all he has to do is look up 1 degree, and he will see us lying there on the side of the roof, acting like we're not there. And I gotta admit, at this point, we're stoned. So this is huge panic. brings the compost in, doesn't see it, walks directly over the butt of the joint and goes inside. Okay, so now there's the mission of how the hell we're going to get downstairs, because we're meant to be asleep. How are we going to get downstairs, out the front door, pick up this fucking joint butt, and get back to the room without noticing? And this is pure Matt style. Well, I'll just jump off the roof. And off he goes. Lands it. Got the, yeah. Picks up the joint. Can't figure out what to do with it. I'm whispering, like, just bury it, just bury it, just bury it in the dirt. He puts it in his pocket. Can't hear me. Then he climbs up the tree near my room, and we retardedly grab each other and like pull him in, and we get into my room, and then we're on the floor and oh god, laughing, like teenage boys trying to pretend that they're asleep, laughing. And I always found it quite amusing that the most down-to-earth, not drug-involved, conservative, first one married, first on family was the one that got me started smoking weed. It was a combined effort. It wasn't he just happened to be the first one that had it on him around me. But yeah. You know, and all our memories that I have with him are like this. Just half of them we're getting stoned and doing something stupid. The other half we're just doing something stupid. But just in the nicest possible way. Coming up with retarded ideas involving gunpowder and bullets and petrol bombs and when my first girlfriend broke up with me, she did it because I was, to quote, boring, only working and coming home and not doing anything, and I haven't bought any new clothes in, like, I'm still wearing the same clothes that I did when we got back to Australia after our travelling trip. I mean, they're just petty excuses of why our relationship had just ended. It doesn't really matter, but you know, she didn't know that I'd actually been saving all my money to have this extravaganza 3-year anniversary, and yeah, well, she broke up with me a week before our 3-year anniversary, so and yeah, bought chili pepper tickets and yeah, organized all this stuff, and so I rang Matt and was like, all right, what are you doing this date? We're going Chili Peppers concert, and we just had a crazy ass weekend, and I mean, that cost me a lot of money that weekend, but it was all worth it, all worth it. Like, we went out after the concert. Well, we went drinking, this place, that place, this place, that place. Ended up at this club called Honky Tonks, and dragged him onto the dance floor, and he didn't. He does not dance. He don't dance. I'm like, come on. He's like, I don't know. I don't even know how, man. Come on. So he was so concentrating on feet that he wasn't paying attention to his hands. He was just like holding his hands like here, like, I don't know, kind of like weird hands, and concentrating on his feet and dancing like this. And I mean, it did look a bit gay. I'm not gonna lie. And from just the back of the room, this obviously gay, dark-skinned guy comes like running to the dance floor in some like tight hot pants, a like leather vest and a bow tie, and wearing nothing else, and just starts like literally gyrating all over man on the dance floor. I mean, this is like so far out of his comfort realms. Like, not that he's homophobic. I mean, he has gay friends, but just the fact of like all of a sudden he's drunk and high, which he did not do often. In this public space on this dance floor, completely out of his comfort zone, and now there's this African American guy gyrating all over him. Oh, it's still etched in my mind as like just beautiful, and I was laughing like hell, like, and dancing with him, and he was just the most politest way you could possibly say no, with body language. That's an example of just how nice a guy he was. That even when he's at like the real limit of his comfort zone, he still had the decency to be like, thank you, no thank you. Yeah. I think that's one of the things about dealing with grief, is that you also feel guilty when you're smiling and grieving. You also feel guilty. And I gotta say, I was feeling really like, you also blame yourself. When I called one of our mutual friends, the closest mutual friend, and he realized it was me, the first thing that he just started saying was apologizing. And I'm like, what are you apologizing for, man? He's like, well, I'm the one that's here. I was the one that, it's me. I was the one that was here. Like, he was instantly blaming himself. I did everything I could to reassure him that there's nothing that you can do. There's no telltale signs that are really that, like, if someone is gonna kill themselves. I mean, the times where I came the closest to killing myself were normal days. Were very normal days. There was nothing in my actions that would have shown to anyone that that's what was going through my mind, because that is what you do in society. The worse you feel, the less you show. When I heard the news, I'd already had a appointment set with a friend to go and go for a walk, and so I did that and talked with her, and about her life and what's going on, and that was all fine. And then left that and put the headphones on and listened to the music. Well, first time listening to music in a long time, I've got to say. So that was like a double whammy, but listening to the music that we listened to together growing up, and that broke me, I have to say. and I didn't want to come walking into my building crying. And I also didn't want to come into my apartment crying. I don't mind it when I start crying here, but I don't want to bring whatever that is with me in here. So, you know, I gotta deal with that right on the public streets, and yeah, I mean, people don't like seeing people break in public. Yeah. People were avoiding me left, right, and center all over the place. Like, you know. And that's how I know that, as fucked up as I am, I'm also a fucking nice guy. I mean, whenever I see people crying in the streets, I always check to see if I have a tissue. And I just walk up, I give them a tissue, and I leave. I don't ask them what's going on. They don't want that. But to be ignored, that's dangerous. Dangerous. And I was on a fucking crossover bridge. I mean, if anyone was showing the symptoms of like, maybe this person is considering something fucking stupid, is standing on a crossover bridge, bawling your fucking eyes out, and like pacing forwards and backwards. Not because I was pacing forwards and backwards, but that's just where the sun was. And and I remember this really in Australia. You know, you're allowed to show anger. You're allowed to show frustration. You're allowed to show disappointment. Fuck, you're even allowed to be goddamn straight up racist. Or prejudiced. But, by God, don't you dare show emotions. Yeah. I mean, that was years ago, maybe it's changed. So what should you do if you are suicidal? Reaching out can be risky, I'm not going to lie. And it's something that I do not do. It's something that I probably should do. But I believe enough in myself now to know that no matter how bad it gets, I still will just tell myself I'll do it tomorrow. And when tomorrow comes, I'll just do it tomorrow. And I'll do it tomorrow. And I'll do it tomorrow. And I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes. That's the simplest way, but I know that works. So, for me, if you're someone that does need support and you don't want to call one of these fucking helplines or whatever, contact the person that you know struggles the most. Because the person who struggles the most is not the weakest person. Quite often, it's the opposite. I'm pretty sure people see me as broken or damaged or weak or whatever. They need to shelter me from life, but that I hate that. I fucking hate it. I ask people, oh, good, fine, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And then I find out months later from someone else that they're really struggling, you know, and it's just like, why bullshit me? What? But I will say one thing about my friend's suicide. I mean, he did things for himself. I'm not saying that he was selfless. But I'm not so sure that he lived for himself. I think that he lived for other people. And I think in this particular time, when you live for other people and all of a sudden these other people are not there, your reason for living is gone. So it's just a balance. Yes, it's very important to live for other people, but it's also important to live for yourself. You need to have a reason for yourself to live, that if everything else is gone, if everything else gets taken away, you still have this force to live.
Well, I mean, good a spot as anywhere to stop. But actually the batteries went flat on the camera, and I just wasn't in a position where I really felt like changing the batteries and coming back and trying to pick up from where I left off. But grief is a process. And like I said at the start of the video, it is a very important process to figure out how to deal with it. There are many, 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 many tools out there. Many different types of therapy based all on this topic. But I'm very aware that A, not everyone can afford therapy, B, not everyone has the social support for therapy, and C, most people don't have time or tell themselves they don't have time for therapy, which is all perfectly understandable. But what that means is it is your responsibility to handle that grief, not to push it away. It is your responsibility to find a way to process it. The best thing I can say is to really just pay attention to it when it's there. Allow it to be there. Analyze it. Be your own test subject and talk yourself through it. What's happening? Verbalize exactly what's happening as you're breaking or as you're experiencing anger, and where it's all coming from. At the end of the day, nothing will make you feel better, but understanding will give it context. Another point is that I think is very important in today's society and in going forward in helping society deal with its bullshit, is if you're feeling really sad and emotional in front of your children, express it. I don't have kids. I'm not here telling you how to raise your kids, okay? I've learned my lesson the hard way enough times of like, if you have kids, no, then shut the fuck up. But I have a very childlike mind. And I know perfectly well from dealing with my nephew or niece or watching people have kids that kids don't listen to what you're saying. They look at what you're doing. Okay? So, if you want your kids to learn how to deal with grief and have a better life than you, well, express how you're feeling, allow them to see it, and then show them the motions of how you deal with this. And lastly, I'm dealing with this 16,500 kilometers away from where I need to be dealing with this. So I am, in a sense, disconnected from the whole subject. And dealing with suicide, for me personally, I want details. I want to know how, why, what was going on, who was saying what, and what was happening here, and you know, is there any chance it was an accident? Is all these random, things that I will not talk about here because there's so many questions. And I think this is a big problem that a lot of people have in dealing with suicide, is that you do have so many questions. And for that, you need patience, because people need to grieve before they can have a look at the details. I can, for some reason, part of my grieving process is the details, but I am very aware that I am not like other people. And at the moment, it's a bit of a laugh or cry situation going on. So, thank you if you made it this far into the video for following to friends or anyone out there who is struggling with the same things. I send you as much mental processing energy as I can out into the world. And yeah, as alone as you feel, death is the one thing that we all have in common. So, there is no end to this. It'll never be ending. But my thoughts and wishes really go out to all of Matt's friends and family.